To cut you off, we're going to throw to Studio Ed right now.
Activities Officer. The Activities Officer supports and develops engagement and inclusivity in extracurricular activities, including societies, media, RAG, volunteering and events. The Activities Officer represents 200 plus student groups to the university, lobbying for their interests and making sure they receive the recognition they deserve.
Hi, so I'm Kaitlyn and I'm here with the Activities Officer nominee, Anna. Say hi, Anna.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, yeah, not too bad.
Cool, so let's get straight into it, I guess. Let's start with an easy one. How would you feel, what about your experience in the past on societies or what have you, makes you feel like you're ready for this role?
Yeah, so I've been involved in societies since the very start of second year. Obviously, first year for me was COVID, so there was not that much to get involved in. But I've been involved in mostly performance societies for about 2 years now. I've been on committee since the start of this year for Shake Sock, but I've been working with committees and throughout societies for almost the entire time I've been at uni. I've been on the BAME committee, the BAME network for a very long time now. Well, I say very long time, since the start of this year. Feels quite long.
Yeah.
And in terms of experience on those, I've helped a lot, especially with the BAME network, on making sure that different societies across campus are as diverse as possible. I've had meetings with Drama Sock, I've had meetings with Shake Sock, I've had meetings within the BAME committee on how we can increase that, and I've worked a lot with those societies to make sure they are as diverse as possible, which is obviously only one factor of helping societies, definitely not the whole role of activities officer. But on top of that, I've worked with Rohan, who's the current activities officer, very closely through the latest project I've done, which is the BAME Creative Showcase. And then on top of that, sort of outside of uni, I've worked as an events officer independently for a year and a half. And we did an online events company called Enchanted Events. I was able to manage an event with over 1,000 people. So yeah, I'm really confident with sort of the structure of activities and how they work. And then obviously my experience working within societies has helped me a lot with that sort of getting to know the amazing things you can do as a society, but also kind of the struggles that you face and things that I would definitely like to change as activities officer.
Cool, yeah. So you think you're ready to represent all 200
Yes.
societies? It's a big job.
Yes, well, I definitely think so. I think that when you get involved, even on one committee, you're immediately kind of opened up to this whole world of the inner workings of USU and working with USU. I've worked on more of a holistic side, again, with representation with Ben Villamy, who's the CEO of Charity and used to be the CEO of USU itself. And I've had a couple of meetings with him and had some really great conversations with him. And I've really been encouraged by a lot of people on that side of USU to kind of go for this role. And so it is a big job, but I do definitely think I'm up to the task for it.
Cool. In your manifesto, you focus a lot on accessibility.
Yes.
What does that mean for you?
Yeah, so I think accessibility, it's such a big word, and I do use it a lot, but for me, it's just making sure that every student on campus is able to feel as comfortable getting involved in activities, whether that is societies, whether that is USU activities, whether that is just extracurricular activities within their own sort of courses. I want to make sure that they feel as comfortable as possible. And then also on the other side of that, getting involved in committees itself can be such a daunting job. You know, I know people and I know myself have definitely kind of struggled with sort of balancing sort of a kind of work-life balance with societies, and I want to avoid that as much as possible. Getting involved with a society, whether it's just as a member or on a committee itself, it should feel fun and it should be like you're able to make change on campus.
This is something that's been brought up recently, and you mentioned it quite a lot in your manifesto, the goal of supporting societies and making these roles less taxing for students. Student media in particularly has long hours and quite a lack of support is coming through from USU right now. Do you have any specific ideas of how to combat this?
So from my side and my experience is, I've worked with TechSoc, I've worked with Vision, I've worked with a lot of performance societies. You know, DramaSoc is one of the biggest theatre companies in the entire country. And when you're talking about these societies, you see sort of the chair and the secretary and also just any person putting work into it, essentially working a job. I think one of the best things that we can do is make sure that they have the support they need. It doesn't feel like it's the end of the world if they need to take a step back.
That's a good point.
And I think, you know, the sort of structure of like AGMs and elections and things like that is super important, but also making sure that we can integrate committees in a way that that people aren't constantly relying on themselves. People can take a step back and say, for now, I can't necessarily fulfill all of my roles. Doesn't mean that you need to hold an AGM or you need to hold an election, but I do want to make sure that I'm taking time for myself. And I think one of the priorities as USU, as the sort of structural basis of committees, is to make sure that that's as easy as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Additionally, on the note of USU, I guess, there's been a lack of candidates running for volunteering officer and raising and giving officer, which come under your sort of sphere of influence if you were to be elected. How do you propose to deal with those challenges going forward?
So I think one of the kind of frustrating things I've seen throughout RAG and volunteering is sort of this idea that it's a kind of add-on. It's something that you just chuck on to different like USU events and USU, and it's something that I've been guilty of like I've been organising an event. I'm like, oh, we can just add a RAG sort of element to it. But I think kind of working to, instead of adding it onto events, to make it a centre point of USU and making it a centre point as the role of activities officer, it should just be it should be something in partnering with societies rather than something that's kind of an afterthought. Which I definitely think makes it more appealing. I think the reason that people tend to go for different USU positions as SABs is because they feel that they can make a change, and I think that you're only really put in a position where you can make a change when that role is centred within USU and within the university as a whole.
Do you think by making that position more noticeable, more promoted, you'll be able to convince people to run either this year or in the future? Like you'll make it a more...
I think definitely, like reflecting on myself as to why I decided to run for activities officer, or having conversations with previous SABS officers, or even having conversations with people who've decided to roll for things like BAME officer, I think all of the sort of feedback I've got from that, and I've got from myself, is that people want to be able to take a stance and make a change. And I don't think that anybody thinks that charity is not a worthwhile sort of thing to pursue, but I think that when you centralise it and when you make sure that there are events that are centralised on it instead of it just being an add-on, you then see that people kind of gravitate towards it better because they actually think that it's something that they can actually affect. So,
yeah. So with, accessibility, volunteering, all these aspects come under activities. Also, you've got the student centre. Just a brief note on that. Any ideas going forward with that?
I think that making sure that it's actually utilised as much as possible. Again, being on committee is something that is really, really an afterthought. So making sure that we can sort of prioritise it as much as possible. And also, like, again, that sort of thing of, I think so many people on committee search for places to go and search for places where they can have meetings, etc., and making sure that it's an open and welcome place for everyone, and kind of incorporating that into making sure that all society members, but also all society committees can see it as kind of like a little place to make sure that they can rely on, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, inclusivity seems to be a big point for you.
Yes.
In terms of accessibility, just quickly, there was a concern that your Instagram isn't accessible enough in terms of some of the font and the alt text. Is that just something you hope
that
to
is definitely so. I was put in contact with this about this today as I was on my way to work, and I got in touch back immediately. It's something that I'm going to be changing immediately, probably as soon as I leave this interview. It is one of those things that really shows, like, I think it's horrible that it happened in the first place, but I do think it shows how important it is to be receptive to change. I think there is always, when you're somebody who, like for myself, I've worked for accessibility and inclusivity my entire time, I think that it's important to make sure that we're responding to it as quickly as possible and honouring it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a learning curve.
Definitely.
And I think that's exciting for you, yeah?
Yeah, it's being open to learning new things.
Thank you very much for coming on tonight, Anna. We're going to Studio Blue now.
Black, Asian